everybody. I hope your season is going well as we are approaching the solstice just a few weeks away. I thought it might be a good time to cover this subject that we're going to talk about today. And why covering it around the solstice? Well, when we reach the solstice, for those of you who are in the southern hemisphere, right? This is when the days will be the longest. So things are the lightest, right? For those of us who are in the northern hemisphere, it's when the days grow shorter, right? So on either side of that spectrum, if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's a good time for going within yourself, reflecting, taking things in, learning. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's a really good time for taking all of these things that we're going to talk about today and really living your life in accordance with these particular things. So what exactly are we going to talk about today? Well, I want to talk to you about a very interesting transit, at least I think, that has already started and is going to be going on until the 21st of July next year. And that is Ketu's transit through Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Now, I know some of you are going to be kind of scurrying and looking at your ephemeris and going, well, you know, I have Ketu being in Purva Bhadrapada, and I'll be seeing all sorts of comments down below very soon. And that's okay. I love it when people put comments there. But I just want to stress before we get into that, I use a different calculation for the nakshatras than is commonly used. I'm not going to go too deep into the technobabble, but a lot of astrologers use a calculation for the nakshatras that's based upon the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun as it moves north to south from solstice to solstice. But as the earth rotates on its axis, the stars don't move north to south. They move east to west. So I use a calculation that's based upon the equator because I feel it to be more astronomically sound, and in addition to that, I have found it to give more precise results in accordance with the nakshatras, which is what I talk a lot about and is one of the cornerstones of my work. So let's talk about Ketu's transit through Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Now, I hope you're sitting down, making yourself comfortable, having yourself a nice warm beverage if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, having a nice cold beverage, whichever one you want. But either way, just relaxing and settling in because I want to take my time with this, right? But I promise not to bore you, hopefully. So let's talk a little bit about Ketu and Rahu and some of the things that they represent. And a good way I find to really understand what Ketu and Rahu are all about is by talking about the royal court of planets. It's something that's listed in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, where it's mentioned that the sun is the king and the moon is the queen, etc. And when we get to Rahu and Ketu, they are the army, okay? Ketu represents the territory that we've captured already. As a matter of fact, one of the words for Ketu is, or one of the translations of Ketu is flag, right? So imagine you have a kingdom, right? And you have land that you have captured, right? That land you're going to know every hill, every bump of, okay? And so Ketu's job is to be aware of what's there already. And we feel most secure when we're within our kingdom, right? Rahu marks that part of the army that goes out and explores new territory in order to encompass it back into the kingdom, right? So Ketu, when that new territory is coming in, Ketu has to become familiar with that, integrate that new territory, really learn everything about it. But eventually that territory becomes something that is secure, known, comfortable. So Ketu represents the manner in which we are most comfortable with acting or reacting, amongst other things. And in terms of past karma, it has that particular connection because our past karma is one of the things that creates our way of relating, or that which we're most comfortable associating with, so to speak. Sometimes, though, we become comfortable with something that's not really the best thing for us. But we know it, it's familiar, right? Well, Rahu's job is to develop us further, past those things that we know that we're comfortable with, that we feel secure doing, that we're familiar with, and help us to explore a new way of relating and a new way of looking at things and a new way of understanding so that we don't get stuck in the past. But equally, we're not supposed to get so concerned about this side of the spectrum either. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to be somewhere in the middle, right? Which is keeping the things that were good from back here and letting go of the things that weren't so good for us in moving forward, right? And the nodes tend to pull us in either direction along those lines. And that's a good way to understand the nodes explained in about 2 minutes, rather than giving you a long, lengthy explanation. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Shatabhishak Nakshatra and understand that a little more deeply. And let's see if we can figure out some of the things that are going on the planet and how this really relates to this experience of Ketu transiting through Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Now, here's a good explanation that I really like. Another name for Shatabhishak is Pracheta. And Pracheta is another name for the progenitors of the human race. In Vedic mythology, there were given 3 different names for the Pracheta, or 3 different types of beings within the Pracheta. There's the Manus, the Dakshas, and the Valmikis, all of which were progenitors of the human race, right? And having achieved divine knowledge, these particular individuals devote themselves to the welfare of creation. Now, the Manus are responsible for physical growth, how society is organized in association with our evolution. In other words, organizing society, making things happen within society in a certain way so that we evolve, so that we grow. Equally, they're connected with geological changes, with earth changes. I bet that's ringing true with a lot of things for you. The Dakshas tend to function on the lower planes of existence, right? Whereas the Manus are like organizing it all. You can think of the Dakshas as kind of implementing that through the individuals themselves. And then you have the Valmikis, who are here to impart spiritual knowledge to each of us so that we purify, so that we grow, and so that we evolve. Now, an interesting thing is when you have some intense planets, let's use that word, like let's say, for instance, if you look at the outer planets, Neptune was recently transiting through Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Obviously, a lot going on with the oceans when that happened, right? Now we've got Ketu that's transiting through that, right? And Ketu transiting through Shatabhishak Nakshatra on the bigger level, and of course, this is going to affect everybody on a different level, dependent upon where in their chart this falls. You'll see, you should have seen a link at the beginning of the video. You'll see another one at the end that'll take you to my astrological services page if you would like to understand more about how it impacts you individually. But let's talk about on the mass scale. We as humans, right, we're being given an opportunity to integrate through these massive experiences that are going on the global scale, such as, for instance, the confrontation that's going on at Standing Rock, which is about Native Americans trying to protect the water, right? And corporate interests wanting to put in a pipeline. That's a very key example. You know, what have we learned? Where do we need to grow, right? That's just one particular example. But overall, there's a lot of changes that are happening with the Earth at a very, very rapid pace, right? And through this particular crisis that we're going through as a planet, you know, as one huge organism all linked together, We're being given an opportunity to learn. Now, Shatabhishak also represents a healing crisis. It's connected with Varuna. Varuna is, for lack of a better way to put it, a lot of you know Neptune, right? So Varuna is kind of like the Vedic equivalent of Neptune. Oh, pardon me, only a little bit deeper. He also is the creator of cosmic law, but he helps us to understand the cosmic laws by first giving us an experience that makes us have a subjective understanding because we're forced to work through something so that we come to understand a greater truth. And so he'll first bring that on by creating a type of a crisis. And that type of a crisis in connection with Ketu, because Ketu on one level is also about integrating what Rahu is bringing into being through Rahu's motion through whatever Rahu is transiting in. And we're going to talk about a particular transit with Rahu that's going on later in the year. Later in 2017, I should say. But let's get to that in a moment. So Ketu's responsibility is integrating things, amongst other things, right? So through this process of integration, we're going through a healing crisis. We're experiencing a healing crisis with the planet. We're being given, as per the Valmiki, as part of the Pracheta, we're being given an opportunity to purify. We're being imparted with spiritual knowledge, if our eyes are open, about what is actually going on, right? And as the Manus are creating physical growth and all sorts of things happening within society as a whole, even geological changes, each of us as an individual through the dakshas are going through a personal evolutionary process in connection with all of this. And we're being given an opportunity to grow. Now, this is all going to heighten especially a few different key points. One being between Christmas Eve of 2016 and the 28th of December 2016, you're going to have Mars in a very close transit with Ketu, likely bringing a lot of this stuff to the surface because Mars is a planet that's going to spark things, right? I'm not going to go into detail. It's better just to understand it on a massive level of things being stirred to the surface. But you need to keep in mind that it's an opportunity to grow. That's the most important thing, an opportunity to grow, right? To learn how to harness your will in a good manner, how we as humans can harness our will in a good manner. Then between the 25th of April and the 21st of July, 2017, 25th of April, Rahu is going to enter Magha Nakshatra. And let's talk a little bit about that because there's a really deep connection here. Aside from the fact that Shatabhishak Nakshatra is a nakshatra that's associated with Rahu, and Magha Nakshatra is a nakshatra that's associated with Ketu. So Rahu will be in a nakshatra that's connected to Ketu, and Ketu will be in a nakshatra that's connected to Rahu. And that's pretty profound. But going deeper with this, Magha Nakshatra is connected to the Pitris, or the ancestral deities, right? Just as the Pracheta are the kind of like the heavenly progenitors of the human race who are here to guide our evolution, the Pitris are like the concrete beings on one level, but they're also spirits, right? Concrete beings on one level who are here to guide our evolution. Those are the ancestors who give birth to us, right? They have come and they have gone, but their spirit still lives on. The spirit of the ancestors still lives on. And basically, the Pitris are there to help to maintain tradition and equally to maintain cultural purity. But let's stop and let's look at that. It's very important to maintain cultural purity. It's very important that individuals are able to keep a link to the culture from which they originated. Tradition equally is something that is important to each of us based upon the upbringing that we had, right? Those are all important things. But sometimes we can equally become dogmatic. And very quickly, cultural purity can turn into cultural arrogance, right? Something that could be healthy pride can turn into unhealthy pride. And tradition can become dogma. Now, we as a planet are here to evolve. We're here to grow. And we're here to learn from each other's tradition. And we're here to learn from each other's purity. So the Petries are here to guide individuals as the ancestors, right? As our progenitors, a more intimate connection with the progenitors, right? With the Pracheta, you have the overall progenitors. Well, with the Petries, you have the closer connection that each of us has to our ancestors or to our culture, so to speak. But the Petries' job is to guide, influence, but not to interfere. And they only interfere when things get really heavy. And when things get really heavy, they will step into things because, if somebody is trying to teach us something and they're whispering and we're still not hearing, and then they're talking and we're still not hearing, well, then eventually they kind of have to shout, don't they? So, basically the Petries don't want to shout. They just want to guide us. They want us to pick it up on our own, because that's how we really grow, is when we listen, we tune in, we open our awareness. And that is how we grow. So this is a very profound cycle, because each of us, through our own tradition, through examining our own origins on a personal level, is having an opportunity to tap in on the grander scale to the evolution of humanity, right? And look at what we've learned. Look at those things from the past, the ancient traditions, the ancient wisdom, those things that hold some really important things for us that we've forgotten or we've totally neglected. That's the wisdom that we need to hold on to. Then there's the other side of us. There's the other side of humanity that can't see the forest because of the trees, right? But it's a good thing to see trees. And it's a good thing to see the forest too. It's just a way of speaking. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes we get so stuck with details and stuck with particulars that we miss the bigger picture. And every culture has some sort of teaching that regards how to be a good human. And each of those cultures says something about how to peacefully interact with your common brethren. And they all equally have something to say about how to positively handle conflict, right? And those are all things that we need to learn. We can become so attached to overly safeguarding something, right, that we don't allow for evolution, right? Equally, we can profane something that's sacred, right, and lose it altogether. And these are things that we're needing to come to grips with. Among other things, the earth is very sacred. We as humans are very sacred. So respecting each other, knowing each other, respecting tradition, respecting something that we all share, which is this earth. And the fact that we call things like water, we call things like air, and we call things like forest natural resources. They're living beings. Are you a resource? Am I a resource? Well, maybe on a certain level, but we're also beings. And when you don't honor the living thing, but instead see it as something that's to be used and not respected, then we lose our essence, you see, because basically the essence of each human, the essence of each animal, the essence of each tree, the essence of each stone is completely divine, right? When we dishonor nature, we dishonor ourselves. It's like saying, I don't have a soul, right? When you get stuck in the hustle bustle of the day-to-day 9-to-5 life, and then you finally get out and experience nature, don't you experience a reconnection to your soul? That's telling you something, right? So there's something that we all have to learn during this time. And you can look equally between the 9th of June and the 1st of July of 2017. Saturn is going to be forming an aspect to Ketu in, within a close amount of orb. These are all close orb periods of time that I've spoken with the exception of Rahu's transit through Magha, which goes past the 21st of July, but Ketu will have shifted out of Shatabhishak by the 21st of July. But the Saturn-Ketu connection is between the 9th of June and the 1st of July, with Saturn transiting Mula. And that's going to bring to the surface something along the lines of, if you continue to push up against the resistance, chaos will heighten. Discord will heighten, right? And sometimes we go through those experiences so we can have an epiphany. So if you're open to the epiphany on the personal level, on the global level at that particular time, then awareness can grow, then you can evolve. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about how this particular transit is going to impact you on the personal level, as I mentioned before, I do offer a vast range of astrological services, which are available through the link that you should see at the bottom of this video. If it's gone and disappeared, you'll see it at the bottom of this page. That's going to do it for this look at Ketu's transit through Shatabhishak Nakshatra, which is going to be going on until the 21st of July. Until the next time we talk, people, please do take the very best care of yourself and each other. Bye now.